Welcome to Global Investment Voice, your premier podcast for diving deep into the world of investment migration. Are you dreaming of a second or third passport? Then join us as we traverse the globe, exploring the ins and outs of the U.S. EB-5 immigrant investor visa, uncover the secrets of golden visas, and delve into the many residency and citizenship by investment programs. Each episode is packed with exclusive insights from top industry experts. Whether you're an investor, developer, or a visionary entrepreneur, we're here to guide you through the complexities of global investment migration. And who better to navigate this journey with than your hosts, the dynamic legal duo of this industry, Mona Shah and Rebecca Singh. Plus, hear directly from a lineup of global investment migration leaders. So, buckle up and tune in to Global Investment Voice, where your global investment journey begins and expands.
Hey, Rebecca. While we far prefer cheerful topics on this podcast, unfortunately, subjects such as bankruptcy do keep on rearing their ugly head.
Oh, I know, Mona. We just had some latest news that an EB-5 project in Utah, which was developed by Wohali, just filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy that's totaling over $13 million.
Yeah, but this is not the first. We know that. There have been several. But let's put this in perspective. There are hundreds and hundreds of EB-5 projects. There are not hundreds and hundreds of bankruptcies. But I've heard a lot of controversies. I've read a lot of controversies. And one of the most controversial writer is David North, who's definitely not someone who's a fan of EB-5. But he does state that he calls EB-5 second or third class investments. And what he says is that it's basically not acknowledged by EB-5 advocates because, of course, we don't believe this, but that EB-5 investments are, by definition, subpar in nature. Promoters who can't secure funding through the normal channels turn to EB-5 only as the last resort when other options are close to them. And I mean, we would strongly disagree, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this in other podcasts because this is not the case. But on average, are EB-5 investments more risky than other ones?
Well, yeah. We're going to have a lot of stakeholders who will be fighting against that. But I mean, isn't that the entire objective of this program? It's an entrepreneurial program. I mean, at the end of the day, someone took a chance on other projects that are out there, right? They're Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, started in a garage.
Right. Somebody took a chance on him.
Yeah.
And if you ask me that if you started in a garage and you're now multi-billionaire, it's someone took a chance. But the argument for EB-5 is also, I think that this is very telling because, a lot of people, and of course, this is something we have been bringing up with the European Commission. It's not about buying residency or buying citizenship. It's about earning it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think a lot of programs too have learned from the EB-5 program and where, how do we stimulate the economy? And with the EB-5 program, it's all about creating jobs. But the other thing is, and Mona, we discuss this all the time, is that EB-5 is at risk as well.
But life is at risk, it is at risk. But the point is here, bankruptcy could happen, but bankruptcy is not necessarily fatal.
No, there's so many moving parts. There's so many different things that are happening. There's different options. So yeah, I think a lot of people get scared when they hear bankruptcy, but it's not the end all.
It isn't, but we've discussed bankruptcy on our podcast several times. I mean, when is this episode 230 or 18 or something? we would have. But interestingly, I think the last time we did discuss bankruptcy was a while ago. We had Joe Moldovan from Morrison Cohen, New York City, who is one of the top bankruptcy lawyers. And he came on the show. Do you remember when that was?
Oh, gosh, Minna, that was October of 2022.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Time flies. But Joe did come on to explain something that had been disturbing a lot of our investors. Really, the difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 11.
Yeah, but Mona, gosh, like you said, it's been almost 3 years. Can you remind us again, what is the difference between Chapter 7 and a Chapter 11 bankruptcy?
Okay, well, just very, very super briefly, because obviously there's a lot. But Chapter 7 is liquidation, which is everything being liquidated, which is what's normal in a lot of countries. Chapter 11, the word Chapter 11 is really peculiar. I won't say unique to the US, but it's the Chapter 11 process itself is kind of unique to the US. Other countries have insolvency restructuring, but not necessarily like Chapter 11. And that's why a lot of the foreign investors don't really get it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think the important part here too with Chapter 11 is that, like you said, with restructuring and reorganization, the projects can actually continue
and bounce back, actually. Yeah. Here's the important thing. I mean, that's on the financial side. We are here to talk about EB5 and how are EB5 investors impacted, if a project does declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So there are issues which are really prevalent and important for EB5 investors.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent on what stage you're in, right? So for example, let's take an investor with a pending I-526 petition or an I-526E. With funds now, what if you have a holdback, an escrow holdback account? What happens at that point?
Let's explain quickly to our audience about an escrow holdback. Some part of the funds are put in escrow pending either a denial or an approval or maybe a withdrawal. And no one has access to that because they're out of everyone's control.
Yes. So I think in normal circumstances, I know, a lot of people do say and we've had this discussion on escrow as well. How long do you wait? And the issue is, if you're waiting for an approval or a denial, that could be years. So sometimes it's changed now where you can actually have maybe some like 25% held back versus the full amount.
Right. I mean, there was a long time ago when the whole amount was in escrow. So we're talking about a small escrow holdback, maybe 10%, 5%, 15%. And very honestly, Rebecca, I think the practice has stopped recently. I think we're talking about the legacy cases where they had an escrow holdback. I don't think there are many current cases. There are a few, but not many where there is an escrow holdback anymore.
Yeah. And so then why is that important when it comes to bankruptcy? Was it worth it to have escrow? Is it better to have all the funds committed to the project?
Well, obviously, hindsight is 20/20 vision. Back in the day, it was considered not good to have it there as a safety valve. And for the vast majority of projects, it has been. But for some of the trouble projects or a project which has hit bankruptcy, and as we have seen, and as we have discussed on another podcast, escrow has been a major hurdle because we cannot show that all the money has been deployed and is creating jobs. And in a bankruptcy, especially a Chapter 11, the first thing which usually happens is that the JCE gets dissolved. So this is an issue, but it's not unsurmountable.
What can we do to get these funds released?
Well, there are two things. We can be proactive and we can see if you have an attorney who understands all of this stuff or a project which understands, and they could ask for an early release prior to any dissolving of the JCE. Or it could possibly, you might have to go to the bankruptcy judge and request a release of the funds to the correct entity. It's really, really important because even if it's not anyone's fault, USCIS is going to say because they look at this very strictly. It's black and white to them. You either have the full money in the account or you don't. And if you don't, even if it's not your fault, too bad, you don't get your green card. You have to have the full amount there.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people get confused too when you think that the funds have been, are in the NCE account, so it's sustained. But really it's not because it needs to actually be used and sustained in the project, so meaning to the JCE account. So it's committed when it goes to the NCE, but for it to be sustained, it has to be used in the project. And these are issues that we don't really see at the I-829 stage because at that point, hopefully the project has done what it's supposed to do and actually showing that you have the 10 jobs, the project has been completed. So it should be easier to show at that point.
Yes, it has. And we've argued this. I mean, we go back. I mean, back in, I think it was 2011, 2012, we worked on that South Dakota Meat Marketing Factory project, which was one which had a lot of attention. And at that stage, they were not at the 829 stage, actually. I believe some were. There was some at 526, some at the 829. And we were successful on getting our clients through. The project had laid off approximately 108 workers, but it still had around 300 on its payroll. So when it filed for bankruptcy, there was still a total of 408. So even though the project was bankrupt and the investors weren't likely to get a return of their capital, at least 40 investors got their green cards.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's important too, to note that even if a project, if it's going through bankruptcy, and even if it's, let's say it's paused for some reason or it didn't get finished the way it's supposed to, you can still get those jobs if funds were expended. So there are ways that you can at least salvage the green cards.
Right.
I just feel like USCIS right now are just taking so long with adjudications that some of these projects, even if you're going through an I-526 that's pending, you're practically at the I-29 stage.
Yeah, I know that it's really frustrating. And if anything, I feel like some of these bodies should be spending money on litigating in these areas. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Let's get back to the issues relating to bankruptcy, because the other big issue on bankruptcy is it's not always the case that you don't get your money back. It is possible to get your money back, or at least a portion of it.
Yeah. So, but I know with EB-5, there's different models. And what model would we suggest would be easier for someone to get their money back if bankruptcy happens?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because again, this is bankruptcy law, which we are not bankruptcy lawyers, but on a very general basis, it is the issue of loans versus equity. And, and in equity, are you preferred equity or is it common stock equity? So, these are all topics, I think, Rebecca, that we really deserve their own podcast for us to discuss which is better to have. But I think if we could give any advice at this point, is that if you're in a project where there is a bankruptcy, there's a Chapter 11, what should an individual investor do? Should they just wait and rely on the project or the regional center, or can they do anything proactively?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think, at that point, we would advise someone to seek independent counsel for that. But, Mona, we get a lot of questions at times too, where potential investors now are saying, well, how do I get a good project? How can I vet whether or not there's a good management team out there?
Well, we have plenty coming up on vetting projects, Rebecca, as you know. But here's the thing, though. These bankruptcies can happen for so many different reasons. You can't always tell. You can have every expert in the field, and then something can happen like COVID. And then the project goes bankrupt. And who would have known all of those successful assisted living homes in Florida would go bankrupt after COVID?
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of people out there think that if someone's going through bankruptcy, they think, oh, automatically there's some wrongdoing. Was there fraud? Was there mismanagement of funds? But again, we've seen so many that wasn't the case. So I think at the end of the day, it's everyone's different. Even if there was mismanagement or something like that, again, did it meet the EB-5 requirements? Right.
Well, that's a good point, because every case is different, and let's say there was financial mismanagement of a small amount, but let's just give an example here. It's a $100 million project and there was financial mismanagement of, say, $5 million. Or there were multiple companies within an organization which is declared Chapter 11, and the EB-5 company hasn't got any for mismanagement. So I think you have to look at each case scenario and see, what really is relevant.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, again, we say bankruptcy blues, but it doesn't have to necessarily be that way.
No, you're right. Bankruptcy is not necessarily a death knell, but it's not, look, it's not something you want either.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, it's always best it's best that you have someone who can, you said, work proactively, projects to be aware of things and to make sure that it goes smoothly from the beginning. But there's always ways that we can get through it.
Yeah. I mean, experience on these issues do matter, but obviously competent counsel and recognizing where you actually need the right advice and to get it done at the right time, because I do believe there are strict deadlines for registering and stuff.
Yes. And so again, independent bankruptcy counsel does come in handy.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Global Investment Voice. A huge thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and sharing this journey with us. Curious about unlocking the potential of global migration and citizenship? Make sure to visit us online at mshalaw.com and globalinvestmentvoice.com. Dive into our extensive library of podcast episodes. Stay ahead with the latest in migration news by signing up for our insider newsletter. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. Find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to keep the conversation going. Remember, the insights shared in our podcast are for informational purposes only, so please seek tailored legal, financial, or investment advice where needed. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep investing smart and living well with Global Investment Voice. We'll see you on the next episode.